Greetings everyone. Today let's talk about Nasdaq, and here's one interesting fact. Actually, in first half of 2023, I know this is like kind of middle of August, but still that doesn't change the point. The Nasdaq rose in the highest pace. I think this was the second best performance since inception of Nasdaq index. And that means this dwarfs any kind of bull market which happened from 2009 till 2022 or the first dot-com bubble in mid to late 90s. And yes, this fact is also reflected to Nasdaq website itself when they state that Nasdaq index performance leaves 1990s in the dust. So yes, Nasdaq index skyrocketed at astonishing 38.8% growth at the first half of 2023. So this is basically a reflection of the great bull markets of history, whether this is 90s or this is earlier, but you get an idea. You get an idea that it is pretty staggering. And if we look at longer chart, yes, this is hourly chart, you could see that yes, we went from like 10,853 to, depending how we want to calculate that, but let's go to 1st of July, which is roughly here. This is like around 15,000 because it stayed flat for some time, and still it managed to rise to bit higher levels at early July and went back to 15,000. Anyways, you get an idea. From 10 to 15,000 in half year. What does it look in more historical context? Well, actually, you could see that for yourself. This is 10,000. This is 15,000. This is like half a year. Previously, we went into 10,000s at. We had year. I remember COVID and the crazy bull market that followed after deaths of COVID. We went here from 10,000. It was like late 2020 till August and 2021. So it was a year. It was the mad bull market of post-COVID times when it went similar fashion, or it could also match. It could only match these deaths when it was in 2020, when everyone was mad at this time. Interest rates were at zero. Crypto was making record numbers, and VCs had record funding because everyone printed COVID money. This is in March 2020, and this is like this is like autumn of 2020. This was probably the best performing period ever of any financial market, VC fund or anything else. And now actually Nasdaq matches this performance. But what's interesting here is that interest rates are 5% now. Banks are failing. Crypto is doing nothing. It stayed flat from its highs and it stays here. So there is no crypto boom ever. VC fundings are low. So none of the indicators which worked previously is working now. Because in every preceded bull market, whether it was in like 2018 was good, yes, in 2010s and late 2009s, Nasdaq was performing best for all these years. There is no questions about that. But these performances were followed by general rise in financial markets like this late 19th, early 2000s. There were record VC fundings here. The interest rates were low. Economy was going swell. So if we look at the late 90s, this period, like, okay, we could take from 1998 to 2000, or we could take like mid 2000s. Here is a bad chart because we don't have, excuse me, I will give you better example. Yes, this was like the first bull market. It wasn't that great, but it was not bad either because markets made more than 40% rise from 2006 to 2007. Then the crash happened, and then it steadily rose like a bullet for years without any kind of crash in except of 2015. So all these years and all these times it had real fundamental reasons why it did that. Whether the interest rates were extremely low, VC fundings were high. In the 2020, I just told you example, everything was going, but not here. Everyone was asking whether there will be hyperinflation, whether banks will collapse, crypto going nowhere, VCs are busting out, everything was going up against it. But still, this I think was one of the greatest rises in history of Nasdaq, which could only compare realistically to madness of mid 2020. So what's the question here? Why is it so that we have such a mad rise and everything else is going pretty bad? Well, answer is simple. This is Nasdaq 100 index, and it reflects best companies. You see there are companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Facebook or Meta corporations, Alphabet or Google, Tesla. You got an idea. These are pretty great companies, and actually if you look at Nasdaq 100 component with year-to-date returns, you could see how top companies have performed. Nvidia, Meta, Tesla, Amazon, these kind of companies, Alphabet here, and Apple, yes, companies that have like largest weights have made stellar gains. Everything was growing 30+%. And if the companies like Apple, like Nvidia is another story, but my point here is that those tech giants, those huge companies were making huge returns, and they make bulk of the Nasdaq composite returns. So that's one simple answer. These companies are great, and actually what's the thing? If we look at this chart, we would see that actually the one thing happened in previous year. The markets actually fell like a cliff for long periods of time. This is like 2022. It has high levels of late 2021, and then it steadily went from these 16,000s to 10,000s, and all these tech giants were particularly bad hit, yes. And actually fact was that whether like crypto startups or VC startups, they were crappy companies with crappy business models, and they ought to be bust. But something like Apple, something like Microsoft, those are leading companies in the world. Their business models are extremely robust, and they were actually falling more than they deserved. So I probably think they reverted to their historical levels, and basically that reflected to the prices. Because here's a simple answer: Nasdaq consists of very strong companies, like world's leading companies. Tech companies rule the world now, and Nasdaq is comprised of tech companies, and some of them were unfairly fallen more than they should, I would say that. And now it basically reverted to previous levels. Like Apple, they don't care about interest rates. Like Microsoft or Meta or Google, similarly, those are giants. They rule the world, and they don't care about interest rates in compared to VCs or startups who doesn't have much of the revenue themselves. So they only reverted to their previous levels once they found out that everything was good. And I would say that's it. That's the real secret sauce. But as an investor, you never know. As an investor, you have to basically make best strategy and best approach for yourself, and use long-term approaches to mimic out all these falls and all these climbs to your advantage. If you are able to do that, world is yours. So look at the big picture. Don't try to time out market, and look at solid fundamentals. Then odds will be at your favor. Simple as that. So let's go further and wait for my next videos.